You're listening to The Deep End, a Penn Plastic Surgery podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Hank Davis. Today, we have the distinct honor of welcoming a true pioneer in craniofacial surgery, Dr. Linton Whitaker. Dr. Whitaker's groundbreaking work in pediatric craniofacial surgery and his vision in establishing the Center for Human Appearance has left an indelible mark on both the field and on the countless lives he's transformed. His mentorship, leadership, and innovative spirit continue to inspire generations of surgeons. Also joining our conversation today is Dr. Joseph Cerletti, who will share his reflections on Dr. Whitaker's remarkable career and lasting influence. Let's jump in. Once again, I'm sitting across from giants in plastic surgery, and it almost made me think of, we were just talking about Roger Federer earlier, but I feel like I'm sitting kind of with like a Rod Laver and John McEnroe, two generations and pioneers in their field. Maybe I'd like to just start off with Dr. Cerletti. What does Dr. Whitaker mean to plastic surgery, the world of plastic surgery, craniofacial surgery, and then also what did he mean to you?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. Well, he was absolutely one of the pioneers in this country for craniofacial surgery. And Tessier, who obviously started the field of craniofacial surgery, he primarily operated on adults. And Linton was the first person to say, let's do this in children, because that's when the defect initially presented. And so he, not only was he, a major contributor to the development of craniofacial surgery here, but an absolute pioneer in terms of doing it in children, which is really the standard now. In addition to that, he started one of the first craniofacial programs and craniofacial fellowships back in 1972. Yeah. And in 1987, he became the chief of plastic surgery at Penn. Another one of his many contributions was making Penn a household name for plastic surgery. It's always been a great program, but he really took it to the next level. And fortunately, we were able just to run with it. So for me personally, I first, I knew who he was, obviously, because I did a craniofacial fellowship myself. I actually interviewed for the fellowship at Penn, but I did it at Hopkins. And when I was a craniofacial fellow, which he sort of remembers, Paul Manson wanted me to go and spend time with other places. But at the same time, Paul was very dependent on the fellow, me at the time, to get a lot of the surgery done. So there wasn't a lot of time to do it. And the simplest thing was to come up and see him. And my pediatric experience was pretty limited, not zero, but it was limited. So for me, two things. One, it was just a drive down 95. And two, I knew that, he was, the originator of pediatric craniofacial surgery, and I wanted to see that. So I spent about 2 weeks here following him around. And you won't remember this, you did a frontal orbital advancement. And you did it a little differently because you did it as a unilateral thing, meaning you moved the affected side. You didn't move the whole thing. And the other thing I remember is he did, and I've told him this before, he did a cleft lip repair. It was a baby with a cleft lip repair. Most people put marks and then he just picked up a 15 blade and bang, and it came out perfect.
And I've seen those marks. That says there's like a
no marks, 15 blade.
Oh my. That's
anyway,
amazing.
To go very far forward, I came here almost 20 years ago, and I will tell you, and I've said this in public forums multiple times, he did more. Dr. Whitaker did more for me than my father did for me, both professionally and personally. So,
Wow. That's
anyway,
special.
it's true.
It's a privilege. It was a privilege, and certainly is having you
Well, thank you.
as my successor.
Yeah, and I feel like Penn has a very special tradition of, paying it forward, and each person kind of takes the baton and tries to, make the place as best as they can. In Annals of Surgery, that Dr. Azori published something on your legacy in craniofacial surgery, and I think it was a true testament to what you've done. Is not only, a lot of people are pioneers and they keep it with themselves, but it was people that you've trained that then went on to be leaders in their field and push it forward. So it's kind of like you were this tree trunk and had all these branches of successors that are kind of taking your legacy and spreading the wealth in some sense.
I mean, if you come up to our offices and see the pictures of the craniofacial fellows, it's a who's who in academic plastic surgery. It's amazing.
And I know you said 1987 was when you became chief of plastic surgery at Penn, but I saw that's also the same year that the Center for Human Appearance was established. So I didn't realize that it was in like your kind of the first year of things. And it probably, nowadays cosmetic surgery, aesthetic surgery is very prominent. Our biggest journal, PRS, has its own section dedicated to cosmetics, or the American Association of Plastic Surgery, our most prestigious and academic conference, has aesthetic sections. But I would assume at the time in 1987, it kind of was breaking barriers a little bit, and it wasn't so accepted. Doctors weren't advertising like they are today. It's a totally different, field. How did you come up with that idea, or why was that so important to you? And was there pushback, and, was it hard to kind of put into motion?
How did you come up with that idea?
So there had been a cleft palate program at Penn, and certainly one of the best in the world. And Peter Randall was head of plastic surgery at Penn, and also the originator of the cleft palate program, and at Penn, and one of the originators in the world. It has multiple specialties assisting, like a cleft lip or palate will be speech defects, lip has visible problems, and dental effect of the clefts on the developing face. So I saw that when I was a resident, and I was fortunate to be sent to Montreal in 1970 for the first presentation by Paul Tessier on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. And I had seen these patients that had major total facial deformities, not just a cleft lip. And I would ask, what can we do about that? Nobody had an answer for that. So I went to Montreal when I was a senior resident. And fortunately, Dr. Lair, who was chief at that time, really helped me in so many ways. He was a big old boy from the South. And he was good to me, though. And so he did everything I asked to do. And it started in Montreal in 1970. And I came back and I told him, I want to do that. And he said, tell me what you need and we'll support you. And so when I was in Montreal and Tessier presented for the first time on this side of the Atlantic, I went up to him and, I was a real youngster at that point, and people were lined up to say hello and shake his hands after his presentation. And I said, sir, I really would like to come and learn this from you. And he said, send me a note. And I did that, and the arrangement was made for me to go and spend a month in Paris, which wasn't a bad place to go and spend a month.
Yeah.
And observe him mostly. I scrubbed in a few times, but he would do 2 or 3 craniofacial procedures in a day. And he operated 3 to 4 days a week, and I went to his office with him to see patients. So that's where it started in 1971, and I came back and said, we really need to do this here, because I saw these patients who had cleft lips, which were being repaired by Peter Randall, cleft palate, but nobody knew what to do with the deformity of the whole face. And I told Dr. Blair, we need to do this here. He said, you do it, and we'll support you all the way. And it started from there, 1972, really, because I finished my residency in 71. And after Tessier came here and operated, I saw infants with major facial deformities, especially connected with craniosynostosis, and one side of the face would be not growing properly, or the entire face. And I asked Dr. Tessier, what do you do with that? And he said, I don't operate on infants. I operate on adults. And I started asking around, and there was a question, had anybody ever moved the bones around in the skull and the upper face in infants? And the answer was basically no. Joe Murray, subsequently, what a word, Nobel Prize.
Yeah, Nobel Prize laureate, right.
Yeah. Joe Murray, I went up and got to know him and went to Boston Children's and watched him, but he really wasn't doing real craniofacial surgery. He was moving the chin forward a little bit and this kind of thing. So nobody in this country was doing it. There was a question of Milt Edgerton at Johns Hopkins at that time and whether he was doing something, but apparently it was the same answer. No intracranial, going intracranial and moving the bones of the face around. And so we started here. As a result of that, I was giving tremendous support by my two senior, Peter Randall at CHOP, where he was head, and Dr. Lair at HUP. And so we started the program, and I started looking at patients at CHOP, and those patients that nobody knew what to do with, I began to see more and more of them as they came in for cleft lip and known entities that needed surgery. And I got in touch with Louis Shute, who was the head of neurosurgery at CHOP, and told him what I wanted to do. And his initial response, there's a brain there, boy. And that's the way he talked. And he said, you going to knock off the brain? And I said, no, you're going to push it back so I can cut the bone.
I love that. Yeah.
And from inside the skull. And so he supported me tremendously also once he understood what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And, I told him, we really need you to protect the brain. And I'm very proud of one statistic after, 40 years of 45 of craniofacial surgery. We never had a brain injury. And people were reporting...
And no deaths.
Wow.
He never had a death.
And no deaths, right. And people were having deaths and brain injuries, especially in England, where they took it up and didn't do it right because Paris was right across the canal there, the channel. And so they were in on it early, but they had a terrible record of deaths and brain injuries. And so we know, as Joe said, we never had either of those, death or brain injury. And well, and we had such support and such good people. The neurosurgeon was superb, and the oral surgeons, when we started moving jaws around as part of it, yeah, it was terrific. And so that all really got going in 1973, and Tessier came here in 73 and 74 twice at CHOP to operate, and I learned tremendously because we'd line up 13, 15 patients for the week he was here to do. And So it really pushed us ahead tremendously, having that one-on-one with him. But he never operated on infants.
Right.
And so we had all the right elements to do it. CHOP is such a quality place, and they were so supportive in every way. C. Everett Koop was the chairman, and he was later Surgeon General of the United States, and he was the kind of guy that you wanted to a little nervous about presenting him with anything. And so I presented him, and he said, "We will support you all the way." That was it too. And so it was such tremendous support. And I could not have done what I did to start this in a lot of places in the world, most places in the world.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm always astonished by, and I love to hear about our firsts, because that means you had either had an original idea or you were the first who had enough courage to do something new, which not a lot of people have. What was it like when you decided to work on infants from the other side of it, from the families, from the parents, from society? Was that something that was taboo, or did people say, "Oh, that's what we should have been doing all along"?
Both. When I did the first one, I was a little concerned about how I could explain this to the parents, because this is a 5-6-month-old child, and the way I explained it was, this is like the first 10 that I did. I said pretty much the same thing, and I said that to the parent that we think this is the right thing to do. The growing brain is forming the upper face and the orbits, and what we need to do is release that suture that closed too early and put things in the right position, and then the brain will push equally on both sides from inside. And that was my thought. And I said, this has not been proven to the parents. I said that. And I said, but it makes sense, because what we know about the brain, when the neurosurgeons release a suture that's holding one side or both sides of the bones back from the brain, pushing them forward, that's what happens. The neurosurgeons unleashed the brain by taking away the thing that's holding it back, the bones that have closed too soon. And I sort of explained that and spent probably 15 or 20 or 30 minutes with parents on the first 10 or so that I did, explaining it. And they all said, "Let's do it." I said, the thing I think to do is, if it's one side back, we release the suture, but move the bones into the right position, symmetrical with the other side or equal with the other side. And it unleashes the brain's growth, so it's not held back anymore. And so that first 10 that I spent a lot of time with before surgery, letting them know this is an unknown procedure. And every one of them, all the people said, do it. There was no hesitation. So
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the genesis of this all. And we speed forward now to the Center for Human Appearance, which, like I said, was founded in 1987, and it's the first and still the most comprehensive academically based center dedicated to the research and education of appearance-related problems and quality of life.
I seem to have heard that.
Yes, that's directly from the website. And that's why I wanted to read it, though, because just as you were alluding to with oral and maxillofacial surgeons and having a great neurosurgeon, it's all built on collaboration. And now we have oculoplastics, otolaryngology, neurology with focus on the human appearance. But Dr. Cerletti, I would like to hear from your perspective now what the Center for Human Appearance has meant and accomplished, and what you hope to see it accomplish in the future.
Let me begin by saying that Linton's the person who put all those specialties together. It was a very, very unique concept to put what are otherwise competing specialties together to optimize patient care. It takes a lot of courage and self-confidence to do that, and clearly, that's him, and that's why it happened. And we no longer. They used to see patients together, and we just physically can't do that. So the center still is a interdisciplinary, collaborative organization that I think at this point primarily funds and promotes research. All of the disciplines get a budget. The bulk of that budget goes to support research fellows or research projects. We have so that the impact that each of the disciplines are making, within their own field and within issues of human appearance, it's immeasurable, and it's launched multiple careers. We every 18 to 24 months we have a symposium. We just had one this fall on comprehensive head and neck reconstruction, and it included everybody: otolaryngology, dermatology, plastic surgery, both adult and pediatric, oculoplastic, OMFS. It was outstanding. It was a day and a half of a true, what is the current state of the art in head and neck reconstruction across the board from all these specialties. The next one is going to be on cosmetic surgery, and it's going to be March of 2025. And Ivona Perchek is going to run it. But again, we're going to involve dermatology, otolaryngology, oculoplastic surgery, dermatology, everybody who touches cosmetic patients. And then we do have an annual research day where all of the funded projects are presented. We have an annual visiting professor. So the Center for Human Appearance remains very, very active, again, primarily promoting research within the various disciplines.
Great. One of the last things, and thank you again for, taking the time, and I think this has been very valuable to all our listeners to hear from legends and giants, as I said before, on how a lot of this got started, and a lot of us wouldn't be in this position with our mentors and people who've, looked ahead to the future. So maybe Dr. Sleddy, you could talk a little bit about just mentorship in general and how you feel about that. And then I'd like to hear from Dr. Whitaker as well.
Before I start that, I think we should recognize something. In that, I don't know if you remember this, Lynn, Hank was a CHA-sponsored research fellow 2 years ago. And he just matched at Penn for plastic surgery. So he'll start July as our intern. So, the beat goes on, and that's what mentorship is about. We've mentored you. You're going to mentor people. It goes on and on. He mentored generations of plastic surgeons. I've always said, of all the things that we do, whether it's taking care of patients, teaching residents, all the day-to-day things that we do, the most important thing that we do is mentorship. And it's because we are ensuring the future. It doesn't matter what discipline you're in, but for us, we are ensuring the future of plastic surgery. And I've always said that the mentorship is not limited. There is no limit to it. He mentored me back when I was a craniofacial fellow. And, while he may not remember, this one person coming up from Baltimore to spend a week, because, there's a lot of people who spent a lot of time with us. I don't remember any of these people. But, I never forgot that. It was a profound experience for me. And then he was the one who told me about the potential opening at Penn for being chief of plastic surgery. And it's gone on and on and on from there. But mentoring is not time limited. and I think the most important thing in addition to mentoring is that the mentoring doesn't stop when the med student graduates from medical school or the resident leaves your program. It should go on for the entire career of the individual.
Yeah. And Dr. Whitaker, anything you that was beautiful, and I think seeing how much you value mentorship and being a mentor and your mentees, I think it inevitably makes us all want to kind of pay it forward and kind of do that one day and hopefully live up to half as much as, or a quarter as much as what you guys have done. But Dr. Whitaker, what about, like, who were some of your mentors, and why did you love mentoring others so much?
My most important mentor was Peter Randall, my predecessor as chief at Penn of plastic surgery. But in more practical terms, what allowed me and enticed me into the direction that I went, that created the world of infant craniofacial surgery and what could be done with that, was having people around me that supported me. Because, again, C. Everett Koop, who was a very strong leader, and you didn't dare do anything that he didn't approve of, but he was so supportive, and all the resources of CHOP, which are enormous, C. Everett Koop supported me, and I couldn't have done it without him. He supported me in many ways, financially as well as get out of here and go to Paris for a month.
I think both of you love Paris a lot, and I'm going for the first time in a month to Paris. Any recommendations?
Eat some food and drink a little wine.
That's what they say. But
we always start at Au Pied de Cochon. We have lunch
down
there. When we land, that's where we go to have lunch. Perfect. I've got some great pictures of all of us there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. But our listeners are going to love to hear from you guys about all this and what you've built. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.